let's get into it, Clarkey. So, Toronto, Montreal. We both say Toronto's winning that series.
I think everyone here can agree Toronto is winning.
Okay, so Toronto is the 6th seed in the NHL. And after that, it's Winnipeg, Edmonton. I'm actually seeing Edmonton winning this series. Edmonton, they dominated the season series against Winnipeg. And Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, it's hard to argue against them. Connor Hellebuyck's a great goalie, but I just think Edmonton's got their number this year.
I got to go with Edmonton too on that. Have to. What are we saying? Let's give the number 2. William Bennett says Oilers in 5. What are we saying?
Oilers in. I could see 5. I could see 5 as well.
I'm going to say it's going to be a stretch. I'm going to say Game 7. I think that Winnipeg's going to dig deep and show that they're still a pretty decent team. I'm going to say Oilers in 7, though.
Okay. Interesting. Next series, let's go down here. So you have Colorado, St. Louis. St. Louis made a run to get in the playoffs late in the season. I think Colorado's the team expected to win this series.
I got to go Colorado here. I think you got to go with Colorado. McKinnon and all their supporting cast, Kadri, Burkowski. I'm saying Colorado in 5.
It's the 1 seed against 15 seed in the NHL. Colorado's been pretty dominant this year. I'm taking Colorado as well.
Everyone's saying Colorado 5, Colorado 4, 4, 4. But a few people confident in the house.
I'm taking Colorado in 6. Colorado in 6. I could see St. Louis pushing the series a bit just because of their playoff experience, but Colorado's going to take this series. And then Vegas Golden Knights, Minnesota Wild, and it's a 1-0 series for the Minnesota Wild right now. As we speak, there's an overtime winner earlier today. This is the 9 seed Minnesota Wild against the 2 seed Vegas Golden Knights. I'm still taking Vegas to win this series, even though it's 1-0, and I think it comes in 6 games.
Yeah, I wasn't seeing Wild win this game today, but they're surprising, and they're a good young team, like you said. But I still got to go with Vegas. I just think Vegas' goaltending and their body of work. I'm going to say Vegas in 6.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then Pittsburgh, New York Islanders. That's a tough one. That's a real tough one. Real tough one. These two teams have met multiple times in the past couple of years in the playoffs. Pittsburgh's really piecing it together. It's hard to bet against Sidney Crosby, and I'm not going to. Even though it's 1-0 the Islanders, I'm taking Pittsburgh in 7.
Yeah, I did a little bit of a side fantasy player pool, and I banked on Pittsburgh, so I got a bias. I hope Pittsburgh brings it out of that branch, so I got to go Pittsburgh too. But man, Islanders are a good defensive team. They are a really good defensive team.
They are a shutdown type of team. How many games do you think that's going to be?
I'm going to have to say 7. Like, I was looking at the stat line today, and they stood on, I don't know, Ilsonov, the goalie on the Islanders, he stood on his head. So I think it's going to be a goalie battle, but I think Pittsburgh squeezes out.
Yeah, it's always tough, those two teams matching up, but I'm going Pittsburgh as well.
How many games?
I said 7.
7? Okay. Yeah.
And then the next series, you have Washington, Boston. That opened the playoffs last night. 1-0 series lead for Washington, and I'm taking Washington in this series. I'm saying it's going to be a 6-game series.
I got to stick with what I thought initially. I'm probably going to be wrong, but I'm going to say Boston, just because I think Washington's kind of beat up. But at the end of the day, Washington's still a really good team. They showed that last night, so I'm going Boston. Boston 7. I got to stick with it.
And you know what? We'll get back to that bracket in a second, but Leafs fans, don't get on me too much here. Hear me out. You might actually want to cheer for Boston to win that playoff series, and I'll tell you why later. but you really might want Boston to win that playoff series against Washington.
What are you smoking?
We got there's some seeding implications, and so Boston right now and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is the 8th seed. Boston's 10th seed. So Toronto's 6th seed. And once you get past your divisions, it becomes the final four, one representative from each division. It's reseeded from there. So the top team plays against the lowest seeded team, and Boston being a lower seeded team than Toronto, Tampa Bay as well, that would push Toronto to play the second highest seeded team instead of the first, as long as someone in the top 5 finishes ahead of Toronto.
So what you're basically saying is that if a lower ranked team than Toronto makes it through, they're going to take the better team, and we play the number 2 team.
Yes, that's correct.
So that could be the difference between playing Colorado and who? Carolina?
Carolina, Florida.
Okay,
So,
yeah. Go Boston then. Go Boston and Tampa.
Basically, you take, and this is if everything that we expect to happen happens, which it very well could not happen. But this is, you could be playing Florida, Carolina as the lower seeds, or you could play Vegas and Colorado as the top 2 seeds.
Yeah, and I guess that we all, like you said, we're making the assumption that the top seeded teams are going to make it through. There could be the case that there's a few teams below Toronto that make it through, like Minnesota, but I don't think that's happening. You never know, though. But yeah, that's a good point that Leafs fans, maybe we shouldn't hate Boston so much this playoffs.
Dude, I voted for Boston, even though I hate them. We have some resentment for the Boston Bruins, and rightfully so. Rightfully so after those playoff experiences, but you might want to root for Boston to beat Washington and make it out of their division. You might want to root for them. Back to the playoff bracket. So
let's go.
we said Toronto to beat Montreal. We said Edmonton to beat Winnipeg. I had Colorado. You had Colorado. We both took Vegas.
Yep.
We both had Pittsburgh. You took Boston, and
I took Boston. Yeah.
I took Washington.
Yep.
Nashville and Carolina, the 3 seed against the 3 seed against the 13 seed in the NHL. Nashville's been very hot as of late.
Damn.
It's actually a more intriguing series than you'd think on paper, but I'm going to go with Carolina.
Yeah, I got to go with you on that. I'm going to say Carolina in 6.
And this might be, I know it's Toronto, Montreal, but just right now, this might be, no, this is the best playoff series in my opinion. Right now.
Really?
For the first playoff series, this is the best one. Tampa, Florida. Tampa Bay, Florida. First time these two teams have matched up in the playoffs in NHL history. The 2 Florida teams. I'm taking the Florida Panthers to win this series in 7 games. Tampa Bay Lightning get Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos back. There's some question marks there for me. I'm not sure if they're going to be full health and what they're going to be capable of doing. I'm not doubting them, but I'm going with Florida for this.
You know, I was convinced that Tampa was going to take it. But the one thing I forgot about Florida, too, is they got a really experienced coach there now. Joe Quenneville, I mean, was he a 3-time winner? Like, he knows what he's doing. Yeah. So I think that that's a big X factor, even though Lightning just came off of it. But I'm going to still go with the Lightning. I'm going to say Lightning in 7. I'm going to take the reverse of you.
Okay, so this really changes the playoff bracket scenario. In your scenario, you'd have. Let me do the reseeding here. So you'd have. So Boston is the 10th seed and Tampa is the 8th seed.
Yep.
Okay.
yeah, so, I have a crazy seeding. Yeah.
Okay, so this really changes a lot. So I'll do mine first, and then we'll get to yours. Okay.
All right.
So in my scenario, it becomes Pittsburgh versus Washington, 5-7. And in that series, I take Pittsburgh in 7.
Okay.
And then to represent the West Division, you have Vegas, Colorado.
Well, I
And,
think that's a series everyone's looking for, Vegas and Colorado. That's going to be, if that happens, that'll be wicked.
and I'm giving the edge to Colorado. Vegas has great goaltending, great team. But I think the edge is going to Colorado this year. They've been pushing for the past couple seasons. They haven't been able to make it as far as they'd like to. I think this is the year they finally make that push. And then you have Florida versus Carolina for me. And in that, I take Carolina. Carolina Hurricanes, 3 seed over the 4 seed. And that leaves us Toronto, Edmonton. There's no doubt in my mind Toronto Maple Leafs would win that series. You remember that dominant stretch of hockey they had earlier in the season where it was three-game miniseries in Edmonton and Toronto won. I believe it was 16-1. The score was. Connor McDavid, Draisaitl had 1 assist combined. So they can dominate the Oilers, and I'd expect that to happen in a playoff series.
Yeah, those are some interesting picks.
Sorry, Clarkey, and then it's down to the final 4, and the reseeding. The way that works out, you have 1-seeded Colorado Avalanche against the 6-seeded Toronto Maple Leafs,
Oof.
and the 3rd-seed Carolina Hurricanes against the 5th-seed Pittsburgh Penguins. In those series, sorry, Leafs Nation. I might take Colorado.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna take Colorado. I'm gonna take Pittsburgh for the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, my.
The Leafs make a push, and they fall in 6 games to the Colorado Avalanche.
Jeez. Okay.
I want
That's a bold prediction.
I want it to be Leafs all the way. I really do, but the way my bracket works out, we get Colorado, and that's a big obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, to win the cup, you got to beat the best. So, damn. Oh, damn. I might have today call as the one team I'm scared of.
Yeah, I mean, that top line, Rantanen, Landeskog, McKinnon, doesn't get much better than that. In your scenario, what you had different, you have Toronto, Edmonton playing against each other. You have Colorado and Vegas. You have Tampa Bay and Carolina.
Yep.
And you have Pittsburgh and Boston. So let's start with Toronto, Edmonton. What's your series looking like?
I'm not even thinking about this one. I think Toronto finishes it off in 5. I think they're going to finish it earlier than they do the Habs. They'll just smoke them. I think Edmonton's goaltending, they're going to be depleted after a long series with Winnipeg, and Toronto will smoke them. They'll get 1 game because of McDavid and Draisaitl. Next, I got Colorado versus Vegas. I got to go with Vegas here. Even though they dropped their first game against Minnesota, I think Vegas's goalies, Fleury with a combo of Leonard, are going to stand on their heads. And I think Colorado, it's going to be a rough series, 7 games for sure. But I think Colorado is just going to come up a bit short. I got Vegas going through. On the other side, Pittsburgh versus Boston. I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's just going to roll through it. I think Boston, Washington, that's going to be a tough series, but I got to go with Pittsburgh. My gut gets so I think Malkin's going to be back healthy by that round, and they're going to go through. I got them hitting it up against. I'm going to go Carolina. Have to go Carolina here. I know I'm picking the number ones, but I think Carolina, they're one of the hottest, youngest, brightest, shining stars in the league this year. I got to go with Carolina on this one. So that leaves me with Pittsburgh, Vegas, Carolina, and Toronto. So Toronto plays Vegas. Yep. Pittsburgh and Carolina play each other, right? Is that right?
Yeah. So our scenarios are actually rather similar. Either way, we're playing against Colorado or Vegas in both of our scenarios.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and we both have Carolina playing Pittsburgh.
yeah. But I'm gonna switch it. I'm gonna say the Leafs beat Vegas, and they're going to the Stanley Cup final. They're gonna beat Vegas because they're going to. I think they're gonna beat them somehow. They're gonna pull it together. I think Campbell at this point, if the Leafs have made it this far, Campbell solidified himself as probably a top 3 or 4 goalie in the playoffs. He's got to be hot as iron, hot iron. But I think the Leafs go to the finals against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh beats them.